This is Fiona from Shoalhaven Regional Gallery. Welcome back to Art Tips number 2. Today we will be talking about acrylic painting. Acrylic paints dry very quickly. Sometimes when you're working, if it's quite warm or dry, this can be a bit of a problem. So one way to counteract that is to make your own palette. This is a really quick and easy way. I'm wetting it down with some water to start with. I'm just taking some kitchen paper towel, laying that on top, and then add more water to it. You want it to be quite wet. So the next part that we're going to add to this is simply a piece of baking paper. You can use greaseproof paper, or you could also use drafting film if you have some of that around home. Smooth it on top. I like to flip it over and secure it so that it doesn't get in a mess while I'm working away. And then you've got a cool, slightly damp surface to use as a palette. There's a few little tricks to keeping your brushes in good condition so they last longer, and then you'll get a much better pleasure out of your painting when your brushes are in good order. One of the first things is when you are painting, never sort of end up leaving your brush sitting like that in the jar, because what will happen is that eventually, as it's sitting, it will bend, and so you lose all the straight bristles that you can manipulate for your painting. The easiest thing to do is dry it off a little bit, lay them straight down to dry. Another good idea is to have 2 pots of water. What this does, I can use one just to use to let down the consistency of my paint. And you'll notice I'm just using the tip of my brush and just going from the edge of the paint. And then that way I can get a really nice fluid brush stroke. Now, the reason I have 2 jars is I'm going to use this one for cleaning, and then on my piece of painting rag, I just wipe it off just to make sure I've got all the colour out of it, to keep everything nice and clean, and it just saves you so much time and bother having to get up and change your water all the time. Exploring the paints you have is a really good thing to do. You'll often find that you can create a colour that you don't have just through experimenting. With this process, I took 7 of my colours, 5 including a white and a black, a cobalt blue, yellow deep, cad red, phthalo green, Indian yellow, magenta. I also listed those colours all the way down that side too. And what happens with this, on this column I mix white with each one of these colours. These are giving me the tints of the colours that I have there. Then I start to mix them through, like the cobalt blue. When I got to the double of cobalt blue, I just played around with how much water I added to see what different effects I could get. So you can see that it's such a great reference to have. It gives me a great idea of where my starting point would be. Now I'm going to show you a tint, a shade, and a tone. So a tint is basically a pure colour or 2 pure colours with white added. This one is a cad red, it's very strong red. And I'll just take a little bit of that red and move it down to here. And then I'll pull a little bit of that white across. There we go. I'm getting more of a peachy orange colour out of that one. The cad red is a warm red, so it's got yellow tones in the red. Now shade is basically the pure colour with black added to it. So just a little speck of black to start with, because it's going to give us the shade of this red quite quickly. So when you're adding things like black or a much darker colour, always start with specks. To make tones, you add grey to your colours. Then I'll just take a little bit of red from the side of my puddle and mix it in with that grey. You can see that that's becoming a darker version, a greyed off version if you like. To finish up today, I'm just going to demonstrate mixing the colours. A couple of things to think about when you are mixing. I always try and use a palette knife so that I don't get my brushes full of paint. I'm using magenta, which has a strong pigment and a deep yellow. I begin by adding magenta to yellow, just using the tiniest bit to start with. This one's going to have a much stronger effect on the yellow. So by adding it little by little, I'll have much more control over what density I want to mix this colour to. Comes up this beautiful coppery, rusty colour. Very easy to clean, just use your painting rag and clean off. If I went the other way around and took a lot of the magenta and then took just a little bit of the yellow, see how it's not really making much difference at all? It's just understanding, and the best way to find this out is doing it through experimenting, getting to know your own paints. But by taking a little bit of that magenta and adding it to quite a large piece of the deep yellow, the magenta really changes the colour much quicker. The idea is that you look at the colour you're mixing, decide which one's going to have the stronger effect, and then just start off by adding little tiny pieces of that to your other colour, to the lighter colour. Hope the tips are useful for you. Enjoy your painting, and I'll see you next time round. Bye.